This is a complicated comparison. I've been using the Poco F3 for over a year, and the Xiaomi 11T is both a step up and step down depending on what you need to do with your phone. Both are similar in many ways, including the price, but the few differences are important and really make it so that these phones fit two totally separate audiences. Here are the main takeaways. The Xiaomi 11T has better battery life, faster charging speeds, a better everyday camera, and longer software support. The F3 has a better processor that enables more features and multiple apps, and a more customizable OS, but which is faster. For day-to-day use, moving around the interface, opening apps, and unlocking with the side-mounted fingerprint scanners both feel about the same to me, which is great because they're fast, and I haven't had any fingerprint reader issues at all. Where they're quite different is the processors they use. The 11T is running the Mediatek Dimensity 1200, while the F3 is using Qualcomm's Snapdragon 870. Both have speedy UFS 3.1 storage and LPDDR5 RAM. You can get versions with 128 or 256 gigs of storage and 8 gigs of RAM, but the F3 also comes in a cheaper 6 gig of RAM, 128 gig storage model. As for benchmarks, they're so close that the differences typically don't matter, with one big exception. The F3 easily wins in Geekbench with a single core score of 940 and multi-core of 3137, where the 11T lags slightly at 898 and 2820 respectively. The scores reverse in 3D Mark's wildlife test, with the 11T managing to pull ahead at 4544 compared to the F3 at 4240. The big difference comes with the CPU throttling test, which I ran to see if either phone would overheat or underperform. Unfortunately, the 11T not just underperforms, it underperforms drastically. The test, which I ran for 45 minutes, saw the 11T throttle to 63% of its max performance, which is terrible. The Poco F3 performs very well, throttling to just 92%, but the most telling statistic is that the F3's minimum score is noticeably higher than the 11T's average score. But I want to be fair to the 11T, so I also ran 3D Mark's wildlife stress test, which showed a much closer result, with the 11T coming out ahead in terms of the score, but the F3 again looking more stable. This test ran for less than half the time as the CPU throttling test, so just keep that in mind. And both devices heated up to a reported 43 degrees Celsius, which is noticeably hot. But besides these tests and some 4K video recording I did outdoors in the middle of the day, these phones managed heat pretty well, only getting warm during things like playing games. Speaking of games, both can keep up well with most titles, even Genshin, but there's a difference in terms of how well optimized they are for the 11T's Mediatek chip. Call of Duty, for example, can run at the ultra frame rate on the F3, where the 11T tops out at the max setting. Both phones have the same game turbo service that adds some important features, and I played Asphalt on each for about 30 minutes and didn't notice any dips in performance. Which has the better screen? They're too similar to really tell. I mean, you could say the F3's display wins since it has a higher peak brightness at 1300 nits instead of the 11T's 1000 nits, but the 11T uses the newer Gorilla Glass Victus instead of the F3's older Gorilla Glass 5. Either way, you have pretty good protection from scratches and drops, and both can easily be seen outdoors on a sunny day. Besides that, they're both large 6.67-inch AMOLED screens running at full HD plus resolutions of 1080 by 2400. The refresh rates are the same, 120 Hz, but not the touch sampling rate, which reaches 480 Hz on the 11T compared to the F3's 360 Hz. This increase on the 11T would usually lead me to suggest it for gamers, but since it's running the Dimensity chip, I'd say you need to check that the games you want to play are fully supported. Remember, the 11T is complicated. If you're finding this video helpful, please give it a like. I genuinely appreciate it. What about the cameras? The 11T does have a better camera system with a solid 108 megapixel main camera and a usable 8 megapixel ultra wide, where the F3's main 48 megapixel shooter is just good, not great. I did a full camera comparison between the two devices, and I'll leave a link in the description. Cameras are a bit complicated though, since both apps have different features enabled. For instance, the 11T has the option to turn on AI shutter in the stock camera app, which basically picks the top shot for you. The F3 does not, but the F3 can record selfie video at 1080p 60 FPS instead of just 1080 30 on the 11T. Also, if you want to shoot more professional video using apps like Filmic Pro or Motion Cam, you'll have more options and better performance on the F3. For example, the F3 can film at a resolution of 4000 by 2250 in 10-bit HDR using Filmic Pro, but the 11T can only film at 3840 by 2160 in 8-bit SDR. Also, the 11T drops frames like crazy filming with Motion Cam, unless you really crop the sensor, where the F3 has no problem, at least at 30 FPS. And if you like to use Gcam ports, again, the F3 is your friend here, since support for Mediatek processors is not widespread in the Gcam community. For audio quality, both phones have loud enough stereo speakers and sound pretty good, but I think I prefer the 11T's fuller sound. I didn't have any issues with Bluetooth pairing, dropouts, or quality on either device, and neither have a headphone jack. How about the batteries? The 11T easily wins this category with its larger 5000 mAh battery and faster 67 watt charging that can take that battery from 1% to full in about 38 minutes. The F3 isn't terrible though. I've been using this one for more than a year, and its 4520 mAh battery and 33 watt charging speed that takes the phone from 1% to full in about 50 minutes is still respectable. A brand new F3 will last a little bit longer, but at this point, my F3 only lasts a little more than a day on a full charge, and the 11T is lasting me a little more than a day and a half, and I can stretch that to 2 days if I cut back on things like watching YouTube videos. But I can't do that because there's too much to watch. Oh, and luckily both phones include their chargers in the box. What about the software experience? This is where the 11T really annoys me. Both phones are running Xiaomi's MIUI 13, since Poco is still basically a sub-brand of Xiaomi, and it's not a bad flavor of Android, but I always have to do some customizing to use Xiaomi phones the way I like. But the 11T won't let me do that. I like using an app drawer with folders, and I can't live without the double tap to lock feature and full screen gesture navigation. MIUI on the 11T won't let you use folders in the app drawer or lock the screen by double tapping when the device is unlocked. I thought, not a huge problem. I'll do what I always do and use a third-party launcher like Nova or Hyperion. But no, if you want gesture navigation to function and get rid of the navigation buttons, you now have to use the stock MIUI launcher. The Poco is much better at the time of recording since its MIUI for Poco OS includes the option to double tap to lock the screen and lets me do some workarounds to use gesture navigation with third-party launchers, which I made an entire video about, so I'll link that in the description if you're interested. I know this might just be a problem for me. A positive note for the 11T is that it's guaranteed to receive 3 major Android platform updates, where the F3 is only guaranteed 2. Since both launched with MIUI 12 and have been updated to 13, that means the Poco will only get 14, as far as we know, and the 11T will get to 15. So if these devices are priced about the same in your region, what should I suggest? For the general user who isn't looking to push their phone to extremes, will happily use the stock camera app, and won't play demanding games for long periods of time, just get the 11T. Its better battery life and camera are improvements over the F3. If, however, you want to customize with long gaming sessions, potentially on higher settings than the 11T, or use professional filming apps and Gcam ports, get the F3, or wait for the F4, but I promise it will be considerably more expensive than either of these phones. If you think the Xiaomi 11T or Poco F3 is the right phone for you, you should check out Wireless Place, since they have Xiaomi and Poco devices, as well as phones from Samsung, Realme, OnePlus, and more. I've bought a few phones from Wireless Place, and they always ship fast and internationally, have great prices, plus they include a US adapter for the charger if you need it. Please use my discount code PC10 when you check out, if you want to support the channel or just want to save a little money. A link to their site is in the description. Don't forget to check out the camera comparison here, and please subscribe if you want to see more content like this. Also, feel free to comment with any questions about this complicated comparison, and I'll give you a complicated answer.